Welcome to the Success Flow Podcast, where our mission is simple: to be better each day and relay our findings with other relentless humans defining success for themselves. If that sounds like you, let's begin. Well, completely smooth sailing, setting up for this podcast per usual.
Very usual. We're not very good at the setup stuff, but hey, we're trying to be in person together, at least in the same room, and that didn't pan out, but we're in the same house.
That's true. Ideally, we were supposed to be across from the table from us. We might shoot a graphic here of us realizing how dumb we are while setting this up and figuring out how the audio works, but to be determined there. We're figuring it out, though. And thanks for pointing out that my mirror is completely crooked.
Yeah, I did switch to the other side of the table for you just so people don't see your crooked mirror and how you decorate not very well. But, when you keep the camera facing you, it helps. Now you know it's crooked. There's levels, too, you could use.
That's a shout out to your sister. You're dissing your sister there because her table's right below it, so...
Oh, man. No, she didn't... You may have gotten the mirror from her, but she didn't hang the mirror, dude.
Yeah,
there's levels that you can use.
I'm calling that guy. And he's going to be back next weekend. All right. So I'm pumped for today. I think we're going to bring some real value. Like when we talked about this podcast and what we're trying to share, I think today of all the guests that we have in the hopper so far and the stuff that we've covered is good, but like this is some tangible, executable stuff for the listeners to really change how they're approaching work. And I think that, I think that as we talk about them, our listeners, how they're trying to define their definition of success, this is the type of stuff that can really help them move the needle.
Yeah, you hit home. We had, our mastermind group, we meet every year in August, and your session last year we've talked about a couple times, or we'll continue to talk about because it's kind of the catalyst to this podcast. But you hit on deep work and the idea of one day a month, which we'll talk about that before we get into the one day month and how to develop those good habits and really get into that flow state. The concept of deep work is really interesting, and I'm excited to share some value.
Absolutely. And I think there's going to be a lot of new stuff as well for the listeners, like binaural beat focus that we're going to talk about a little bit, and some of the accountability partner stuff, kind of what you and I have kind of come across, holding each other to what we're trying to create and achieve, and some specific ways people can reach out and do that without really any cost, except for time, which is the most important cost. So I say we're ready. Let's jump right in. Let's drop some bamboo bangers, bamboo bombs, whatever we're gonna call them.
Bamboo bangers. That's it, dude.
Let's start dishing them out.
All right, bamboo bangers. That's our thing for sure. I love that one. All right, jump in. Hit me with some good words of wisdom and what you got. Who in your world, or someone that you admire, or someone that you've read about in your world that kind of gets into the topic of deep work?
Yeah. So while approaching this stuff, this concept of getting into flow state and how we move the needle on our most mission critical tasks, the kind of modern godfather of deep work is Cal Newport, who's this MIT educated brain, computer scientist who wrote two impact books. The biggest one being Deep Work is what it's called. And the second one is Digital Minimalism, that really focuses on not being so tethered to our electronics, which is a whole nother topic that we'll be talking about down the road on the pod. But like when we talk about deep work, it is really being able to single task how your environment is set up for getting into that deep work. No distractions. You have, if you're writing, you have a word processor up, no other windows, maybe your notes. If you open up a browser for that writing, you go to that browser, have the discipline to do your research, shut said browser, back to writing. If you are a comedian, that's going to be back to writing or practicing your craft, you're isolated. You're going through those motions with one task in mind. And whatever knowledge work you're doing, whether it be sales or you're an architect or engineer drafting up designs, that deep level of work, or building out a strategic plan from a leadership perspective for a year, you cannot be task switching. That's what we're trying to avoid in deep work. Our brains aren't built to go from one task to another. You can't maintain energy or a state of focus to really move the needle if you're constantly switching from task to task. So for me in my life there, that is territory analysis and really dropping in deep to my accounts and clients from a strategic sales perspective. I can't be answering pings and email. Email's the email is the number one distractor. We all want to respond in real time. He talks a lot about avoiding that. And Cal Newport is really just, if you are looking to an entry-level way to talk about how you can really move the needle on these high complex tasks, Cal Newport is your guy to start with.
Yeah, that sounds like a great addition to the Audible library. If you haven't picked that one up, got to throw it in. I'm an Audible guy, right? So I like throwing those things in there.
And I think for you, the reason we wanted to kind of get this episode in early is you were talking to me about how your mornings have become such a container for deep work. And you've really embodied this over the last, 18 months.
Yeah, for sure. I was never the early riser of the group, of the family or anything. Even growing up, I always loved my sleep. It was late nights, bit of a night owl. But, as you get older and you have more of a purpose and you define that and the things you want to accomplish, you kind of dedicate time in the morning. It's a quiet time of the day. My kids aren't even up from, they're not even waking up yet. So you get up in the morning.
The rest of the world's not up yet.
True. And exactly. And it's all about the habits and rituals that you build into your life on a daily basis. I think when you have this, I always had this mindset of chaotic organization where it was a little bit all over the place, but I kind of knew what I was doing. But until I started structuring this thing a little bit, it totally changed my mindset, opened up my mind into what I wanted to accomplish and the growth that, towards my perception of success. And it starts in the morning. So you get up early. I don't work out every day, but when I do it in the morning. I'm back by 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I hit the Audible or I hit, whether it's a podcast or a book, or maybe it's meditation, right? And so I kick off the morning with just a reset of the mind. And it's allowed me to just be free flowing and creative throughout the rest of my day. So I had this thing I call it the Daily Power, where you set your intention. I have a playbook that I've developed for myself to kind of be able to track these things and write it down of how do I want to be? What are the tasks I want to accomplish? Who can help? And then you talk about recognizing your opportunities, your wins, and the things that you learn about yourself. And then at the end of the day, you can reflect on it, rate it, and how do you get better tomorrow? But as I built out the OppoFlow mindset and, structuring the talks and the speaking engagements that I do and this podcast, preparing for this, as well as the storybook, which is the weekly email newsletter that I send out, sharing this mindset shift and various opportunity stories of others. As I prepare for those, by setting the morning correctly, that allows me to be ready to roll. I can dive into the things that I want to dive into and have that no distraction flow state that you talk about, right? Because I'm not getting a ton of emails first thing in the morning. So I can dive in for an hour and just hammer away at this stuff, but it's not challenging. It's not work. It's fun because I've set the mindset and it just flows. There's no distractions or anything like that. So when you love the result, but you love the journey along the way, it just, like, I think I was telling you the other day, watching basketball, I barely watch pro sports anymore. I used to watch games all the time, but I'll have the NBA playoffs on in the background, start the game, get on the laptop at night and, write my storybook feature or whatever. And the next thing I do, I look up and there's 3 minutes left in the game. I'm like, holy crap, where'd the last 2 hours go? And that's flow state. That's when you're just dialed into what you're trying to create. And having the freedom create is just unbelievable when you tap into that. And I think it starts in the morning, the way you set your intention for the day.
Bamboo banger right there. I think it's spot on. It's a great example of how creative work requires flow state. I would also like to just throw in here quickly as well, the other stuff, the mundane, boring admin, fundamental stuff too, that also can be batched together in these flow states and you just domino effect them. So calendar block, list of those items, nothing else, one after the other, domino, bang, 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 bang. That is also a sense of flow state. We may be task switching, but we know that what those tasks are and we're not going to do anything but the next one. It's planned out. We've prepped for it. It's calendar blocked. And you can knock off that minutia work too in a flow state, I've found. And it's a huge, huge benefit to get that done.
Oh, totally. I mean, that chaotic organization I was talking about, if you don't have, you're bouncing around all over the place, but this is probably a perfect time to talk about flow state, right? And how do we handle those tasks and how we knock those out efficiently.
Absolutely. So the number one requirement for flow is focus. We try to get in these states. That's the number one requirement. The number one enemy of flow, and what will make sure that you do not get into a flow state, is distraction. And this day and age, that's why we're not experiencing a flow. And my argument is that's why we're so unhappy. I really believe that humans are happiest when they are in flow states, moving the needle on whatever their purpose and North Star is. We can't do that when we have distraction all around us. It's back to that one word processor in front of you, a quiet room to practice the speaking that you're going to give, the presentation that you're going to give, just that slide deck up in quiet solitude, getting the details down. And once you have that complete flow or focus, we like to say 15, 20 minutes of that single task is when you can really drop in. May take a little longer, maybe more immediate. But once you drop in, your sense of self disappears. Time dilates. It may speed up or seem like it's going very slow. Your prefrontal cortex shuts down. That's the sense of self and sense of focus on the specific task. And you are just operating. You feel your best. You perform your best. You look up and you have just created a ton or knocked out a ton of the mundane. The first time I experienced it was in actually doing research on meditation itself, and it got dark outside, and I was like, how did this happen? It started in the middle of the day. It was 3 or 4 hours. Like, it had completely gotten dark, and I missed it. So there are a lot of areas that this flow state, most humans have felt it. We've talked about it in a previous episode. But most humans have felt it, but they haven't found a way to actively get back into it. I know that you've experienced it in different aspects of life.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about sports, right, that runner's high or a professional, or even just an athlete, you don't even have to be a professional. When you're playing a game, you can be a kid, doesn't matter. But when you're in that, in that flow state of the game, you're not caring about anything else that goes on. You just care about the game and how you play. But now that I'm old, I don't feel like breaking ankles on the basketball court anymore. Or
your ankles, not other people's ankles.
Yeah, I can't do that anymore. Or pulling a hammy trying to run, after a half mile. So my sport now is these days is just the creation of, the freedom to create things and produce content and sharing the mindset of how to keep an open mind and all those types of things. So flow state has been powerful. And as we talked about, it starts in the morning, but you're right. Those distractions, how often do we jump into something and then 2 minutes later, your phone is pinging with a text message or a headline, or the iPhone gods out there are very good about pinging you to react, to look at something, because they want you involved. They want you to be in your face all the time. And you've got to shut that stuff down. You have to put it aside. You got to close it up. When you're ready to, knock out a major project and get into that and you want to do it in an efficient amount of time, you've got to put yourself in that room, by yourself. And I think music has a lot to do with this, right? And I think music is very powerful in generating that flow state, getting you into that state of mind. Like, for example, music is it's brain plasticity. It gives you that ability to be okay with change and be okay with trying something new, and it allows you to adapt, right? And it helps with motor skills and activity, right? Music, like when we're out there working out or at the gym or whatever, it pumps us up, it gets us going, but it also increases our positivity and changes our mood, right? It reduces stress or anxiety. Right?
I think music can take you to another time zone too. Like, it can literally, a song will come on and you're 22 years old again in a very specific part of the world, and recollecting and have emotions come immediately.
100%. It's an emotional reaction when you put on tunes, and it brings you back to maybe simpler times or an experience that you had. I mean, it helps with memory, right? So when you're working on things, and as you were doing something when you were 22 years old, if you can remember that song or that group or that band that you were listening to at the time, it brings you back to those. So it increases creativity and focus. To give you a couple examples, days aren't always great, right? We're all human and things suck at times. And you're like, the weight of your of what you need to accomplish, maybe you're a business owner, or maybe you're the provider for your family, or maybe not. And it's just going through something throughout your day, and you throw on that group or that band that brought you back to simpler times. Like for me, it's Incubus. For whatever reason, Brandon Boyd is just the man. And Morning View and Make Yourself, I can go on a walk for an hour and listen to both of those albums, and I can be in a major, major rut. And then as soon as I knock those tunes out for 90 minutes, I'm back at it. Like it's the weirdest thing. So whatever that band
Dude,
is,
I've got an embarrassing one for you.
Yeah,
I
go
can't
ahead.
believe I'm actually about to say this because I was fighting it.
Yeah.
The amount of Disney songs on my workout mix is embarrassing. Like I got some Tarzan Phil Collins on there. I got
hilarious.
some. I think the number one is Mulan. I'll Make a Man Out of You.
No
A
way.
little bit of Hurt. Oh, I'll be sharing those with you. But
Oh my God.
they take me back to when I was just fired up as a kid, ready to, back to the superhero thing.
Totally. It brings you back, and it reinvigorates you, right? It gives you back that energy
Absolutely.
and kind of gets you out of that rut. So
We might be editing that out.
yeah, no, we're not. We are not editing that out. Everyone wants to know your Disney obsession. So
There is. I got to own it at this point.
we'll talk about playlists. If you haven't seen Phil's playlist, it's just filled with Lion King and Little Mermaid. No,
Oh
but
my
like,
God.
and you talk about like the mundane tasks, right? And for me, when I was building the payroll business journey in Phoenix, I was building all of our new clients. I was implementing all of our new clients at the time, and I remember during the day, I didn't have the time to do it. I was working on the business, doing all these other things, external networking to help grow it. But at night was the time when I would do actually set up the clients in our system. And it was very data entry driven and a lot of like detail. It's just very mundane stuff. But what I would do is I would throw the headphones on and just cruise through that stuff. And even though it's not like super fun work, it made it fun because of the music that I was listening to and the power that it had on my brain. And it was flow state for sure. I'd go from like 8 o'clock at night until midnight and get like 2 new clients set up that, and then the next morning I'm like, dang, like I might've been a little tired, but it just was so refreshing to know that I got those done when I had a deadline to get them done. And I was able to do it that night. And music is one of the things that really helped me do that. So, do you know that movie Swordfish, right? With Hugh Jackman, and he's like, there's that scene where he's plugging away and like hacking the world or building the worm or something like that. He's got like 14 monitors.
So I have to admit I haven't seen it, but were you like feeling like you were hacking, taking over the world, one payroll process at a time?
Yeah, no, I mean, not like in an evil way, right? I wasn't like trying to hack the world for like millions of dollars or anything, but that scene, it's like a super famous scene, YouTube it, it's 2-minute video, and Hugh Jackman's character, Stanley, he's in there and he's got the music going and he's got 14 monitors. Imagine like trying to hack the world and he's just banging it out and just cruising. And anyway, I did feel like Hugh Jackman in that.
It's
in
on
that
the
situation.
list. That'll be a good one. Paula likes those throwback movies too, so that one's going on the list.
You can't go wrong with Halle Berry too. She's in that one, and John Travolta. It's a great cast, great movie. But that scene, check it out. That talk about flow state and music and just banging things out and dominating your project, right? And I think music is a big reason for helping being efficient and getting through that.
Couldn't agree more. I'm hesitant to. I know we're just starting this journey, but there's a company that I keep saying, oh, should I just with Spotify subscription should I cancel it? But there's a company called Brain FM, and I'm just mentioning them because it's such a good product, I believe, for what you pay for it. And what I like about it is I try to avoid lyrics. Like I have a very I'm a right brain type of guy, and I love lyrics. And so that is another distraction for me. I will get hooked up on a lyric and it'll hit me and that'll take me off. So the binaural beats that Brain FM only produces, and they categorize them by focus, relaxation, sleep, and meditation. They're just these awesome lyricless beats, and they're all really different too. So that when I need to get something done, this exact setup where I'm sitting right now, minimalist setup, those beats in, I'm just off to the races and can really move the needle. So if you have that lyric thing like I do, check out Brain FM or just Google binaural beats. There's free stuff on YouTube as well.
Yeah, and so lately I've been really into this instrumental stuff, like upbeat, positive instrumental music, and our guy Teddy Lyles.
I was telling him the musical madman.
Dude, his playlists are unreal. He's got like he's like 6'8", and just a beast, and he just has the best playlist, the best music to listen. So anyway, I'm telling him,
future podcast for sure. He'll be on to drop some bamboo bangers.
oh
He'll
yeah, bamboo bangers for sure. He's gonna drop, and he's the only guy that I had to like look up to. Like, we're tall, right? You look up to and you like, hey, what's up, brother? And you give him a hug, and you're like on your tiptoes. It feels real weird,
he's
but
a giant.
I love that guy. So I'm telling him I'm listening to instrumental music, and he's like, oh, dude, I got the perfect playlist for you. He sends it over. Do you know what the title of this thing was?
That was a great impression.
Yeah, you know what the you know what the title of this playlist was? Street Legal Face Melters. I'm like, what the hell? But I listened to this thing, and
why couldn't that be the name of the podcast?
That will be the name of the podcast when we get him on, for sure.
I love it.
It's just vibes, man. It gets you. You can't not be positive and not be in that flow state when you throw that thing on. And he's got like 11 hours of tunes on there. It's fantastic. So anyway, Spotify playlists. Check out Street Legal Face Melters. Go find it if you're on Spotify.
I've got a long list after this pod, and I'm going to be my afternoon's tied up.
Oh man, I love it. All right, so digressing from music a little bit. I mean, we know that is a very powerful tool, and add that to your life, and there's so many benefits to it. But thinking about like the 1 day month stuff, like I don't know if we want to jump into there now and talking about how you get like those tasks, or maybe it's not the 1 day. We'll hold that off for a second.
Let's talk about accountability.
Yeah. Okay. I like it.
So you and I think are finding this in real time with this project of the podcast and everything that we have going on between actually putting food on the table, Junto, where we've got a lot just to overlap, not to mention individually what we're trying to create. So I think that accountability is probably the number one thing. The amount of coaching programs and courses that I've done I've invested in tens of thousands, 50, 60,000 is what I have it at now between coaching and courses and the things that I've done. And the reason you pay for those things is accountability. That's what you're paying for, is someone who hears what you are trying to work on, literally listens to, this is what's important to me. This is my North Star. This is what I think is going to move the needle, and hold you to it. And you've been a great accountability partner for me for that. But like, I've paid thousands of dollars for people to just say, hey, Phil, this is what you said. This is who you say you are. What have where's the work to back it up? And it works. It because you can make all the excuses in the world on why something else is more important. So prioritization, once you have that laid out, that's step one, right? Design the North Star. But step two is where everyone falls off. They might do all the planning in the world, but when it comes to taking the action, it's tough. That's where you get down to the people that we're trying to have on this podcast, the people that we're mentioning on this podcast, is they do the work. They take action. And so there's a couple companies out there that I had sent you, and Commit Action's one of them. Cave Day is one. And what they're doing is they're setting up basically a Zoom function. You get together, you type in, this is what I'm working on for the next hour, next 2 hours, next 3 hours. Your partner tells you what they're working on for that next period, and you both stay on camera and go to work. And then timer goes up. Neither you guys are all hydrated. Hopefully no even bathroom breaks. You guys you've been in each other's line of sight for the last 2 hours. What'd you get done? Debrief, boom, you're done. And you and I have talked about, we didn't get it done for this podcast, which would have been great just to debrief it, but we're going to do that at some point. And depending on what project we're working on. But I just think it's a great way that humans, we can, not to mention the sense of community it builds. It's someone that you might be a complete stranger, but someone that you can communicate with what you're working on and literally help each other out in a short period of time.
Yeah, the Cave Day stuff you sent over was super interesting. I never heard of the concept, but looking into it, like, you nailed it. Like, getting the community, a group together to hold each other accountable, but doing it without distraction, right? You're just focused on whatever it is that you're working on, and then you take a break in between and be like, okay, where you at? Or what's this? Or have you done that? And the accountability stuff, you mentioned being prepared and be like, yeah, I got all these ideas and all that, but it takes action to learn something new about yourself or the things that you need to accomplish. So you have to challenge yourself on purpose. And if diving into something for 2 hours with a group of people you may not have ever met, right? The Cave Day is like, it's not always the same teams. It could be other people, right? And so it's just random people that are holding you accountable. And so you have to challenge yourself on purpose to find out what comes out on the other side and learn about yourself and just continue in that growth. And so I know like accountability, when you do what you say you're going to do, whether the other people care about it or not, if you care that you think that they care, then you're forced to follow through on what you said you were going to do. So like,
Exactly.
for instance, this podcast, right? It's a weekly deal. We make sure we're providing content weekly for the listeners because whether they care or not, we care that they might care. And so we want to make sure we hold ourselves accountable and continue that. I do the same thing with the storybook and the weekly reads, right? That I send out it's not your boring, mundane, black and white text email that you get, but it's very entertaining, inspiring, colorful, and fun. But I share opportunity stories about other people. And I also share mindset stuff that we talk about. And I do that in the written form. And so when every week I get that out, right? And I'm forcing myself, I'm challenging myself on purpose to take action and learn something new because my readers, whether I don't know if they really care, but I care that I think they care. So I'm going to continue working that, hold myself accountable. So you can do it solo. But then when you have these ideas like Cave Day, you have other people in your corner. So you got to check your inner circle and make sure you're surrounding yourself around people who will continue to hold you to that standard that you've set for yourself. As soon as you say something out loud that you're going to do it, no, well, shit, now you got to do it, right? And so you got to have those people that will hold you accountable for that.
Absolutely. We did it in college, right? We did it in college for study groups, or we did it in sports as athletes. Why not do it as adults, as business athletes? Like, why do we stop? Right? It's one of those things that we shouldn't change from being younger.
100%. Accountability is a strong word. People don't like it, right? But the most successful people, perceived successful people, whether they're millionaires or just doing great things in the community or whatever, it doesn't matter. But the ones that are actually taking action are the ones that thrive on accountability, and they look for people to hold them accountable. So it's a tough word. It's a tough concept sometimes for a lot of people, but it's one of those must-haves that you need to build into your life. And, couldn't agree more. Cave Day, Focus Mate, those things you sent over, they've got something that's really special going on. I think those things are going to take off even further, especially as we start thinking about remote work and virtual and people self-branding themselves and building businesses. And, you got to have other people around you. And those just facilitate a nice, easy platform to do that.
Amen.
All right. Talk me through 1 day month. This is a really cool concept. You hit on it in your session last year. It's definitely something I'm super inspired by, and I have not done it yet, but I want to hear from you again. What are the details of how this works? Like literally knocking out a full month in 1 day is the idea. So hit me with it.
I thought you would never ask. I know that this sounds clickbaity, getting the 1 day month. The idea here is using the concepts of flow and the average amount of work that a knowledge worker is getting done in a day, that we can structure a day to get enough as the average person does in 1 month, in 1 day as a business athlete. So bear with me while I work through the mathematics here. So like any business case, we're working through some assumptions here. The assumption is that the average knowledge worker is getting 1 hour of accurate flow daily. And I went and looked back at myself 8 years ago, and it was probably right. It was much more sporadic work, like we talked about earlier. So that would mean 22 work days in a month, that's only 22 hours of flow any month that the average person's getting. How do we do that in a day? So we are going to also assume that getting into a flow state is twice as productive. There are arguments that it's 5 times as productive. That is a McKinsey-based study that a flow state improves executive function. This was a study done with executives that they got 500% more done. But just for this, we're gonna say double. What are we gonna do? What we talked about earlier. We're not gonna task switch. We're gonna eliminate all the distractions in our workspace. It's gonna be completely lined out what we're working on. No questions on what we're working on during this day. And we're gonna have specific breaks where we're using our business athlete practices of recovery and movement to make sure that we are ready and rested for our next sprint, like lions. Wait, sleep, rest, go hard, catch the meal, and hunt for dinner. And we're going to reduce the cognitive load that we have only for our specific work. Now, again, we're not going to be doing this every week. This is a potentially, I think at best quarterly. You do it twice a year, amazing. It might be once a year for strategic planning. But this is the stuff that moves the needles, and we're not going to do it all the time. So I hope everyone's with me on the math. If you're just listening, I know it can be a little tough, so check us out on YouTube, but or reach out to me directly. I'm happy to share this stuff. Again, all credit to the Flow Research Collective for this. So how are we going to do that? We're going to time block like we talked about earlier. Basically, we're getting up early. We're going to tell the family, we're going to tell the wife and kids, this is for you so we can have quality time once I move all this and I'm not just picking away at it on the weekends or evenings. We're going to tell them I'm blocked off, maybe get a hotel room, cabin in the woods, or just block yourself with water and canned goods in your office. Whatever it is, you're off the map today. This is just moving this specific task. We're up early. We're going to hit 3 hours out the gate. Boom. Hydrated, ready to go. Take an hour break. Meditate, work out, walk outside. All the things that we know help us recover. We're going to do an in-depth podcast on that. Another 3 hours, we're back at it. Moving the needle, nothing else. Single task, deep work, flow state. Lunch, same thing. Get that rest in, refuel, get some movement in, meditate, whatever. Block 3, we're gonna drop it just a little bit, 2 more hours, followed by another break, and close out that last block, which hopefully you're gonna get that good rest in because it's the hardest stretch. But when you're done at 8, I promise you're gonna sleep well because of everything that you've moved. And we have now gotten that 11 hours of work done that the average knowledge worker is doing in a day, but we did it because we've doubled it being in such a flow state. This blew my mind. I think it was pretty impactful for the guys because you might not nail this exactly, right? This is ideal. If you get anywhere close to this, you are moving the needle. I don't know what your thoughts are, Stephen, second time going through this.
Yeah, totally. So so the 11 hours of flow state you're saying is the average worker or average person is getting 11 hours of flow state in a month, right? In their full month, right? So we're now dialing those 11 hours into one day, and the amount of information or things you can create or projects you can accomplish in that one day. Now you've got all this time for the rest of the month. Right. And I think strategic planning, you nailed it, right? So like if you're trying to build something, you're trying to create something new, you've never done it before, or maybe you're starting a new business, you've never done it before, and you just need to understand the industry, or you need to build your business plan and your marketing strategy, whatever it is, this would be perfect for that. Spend the full day, lock yourself into a freaking room, maybe go to a hotel if you can swing it, and just knock this stuff out and get that flow state 11 hours in one day. And like you said, you will be sleeping like a baby at the end of it. And then the next day,
Found it interesting that this week you got this without prompting this at all. This week you got the advice to go do this by one of our mentors in the Gento group.
Totally. So, that's what's great about Mastermind is you can be vulnerable about your businesses and personally, professionally, whatever. And I was talking about some challenges we were having. And so one of the guys says is like, well, grab your business partner, go up to, go somewhere outside of the city or whatever, and just strategically plan what you guys need to do, what the next steps are to get what's that inflection point to get that growth that you're looking for, and spend the day or two or whatever, and just have these flow state hours where nothing no email, no phone, no nothing. Tell the families, hey, we've got to knock this stuff out. And then by the end of it, you'll have your plan. And you're right. I got that advice, and I'm going to have to put that on the calendar because it was great advice.
We're both due for one. I'm getting a mini one in this week, just at home after this. But we're both due for one, and we'll be reporting back on that because I have a feeling people are going to be reaching out about this.
Yeah. And if you're thinking about writing a book, didn't J.K. Rowling do this? She wrote Harry Potter by locking herself in a hotel.
Really expensive hotel, I believe in Edinburgh. I think it was there actually this past summer, and it was just a place where she had to get this thing finished. She just went and got room service for days on end to get the thing finished. Because everyone knows Harry Potter, the complexity of that book, and I think that woman's a genius. She had to be isolated. She had to find a flow state. So I love that example as well.
Yeah, that was a good one, but. One day a month. Love it.
Yeah, and you're going to be ready for a nice recovery day after that. And I think that it's going to be an impact on your friends and family too. You're going to show up different if you knock out a couple of those, start moving the needle, and it's going to flow. The other thing of that last slide that I took down is it's going to benefit every other aspect of your work life. Dude, I think that's a wrap.
Bamboo bangers.
I just realized that Strand is getting some free advertisement on this.
Yeah, the Flightwork shirt.
We gotta get better at this.
dope.
We're doing way too much advertising on this.
We sure are. That's all good. We're givers. Givers gain.